Hey, what's up everybody? Jake here and welcome to the hobby. In today's video, we are going to be talking about graded Pokemon cards and how a lot of people see them kind of as a scam. And are they a scam? Because basically you have raw copies of cards going for right around, let's say $250. And as soon as you grade that card, suddenly it's worth 6 times more, 7 times more, sometimes way more than that. At a certain point, are you buying the card or are you buying the label? And in a lot of cases, I recommend you buy the card and kind of ignore the label. Here we have a couple of examples of different graded cards. We got ourselves SGC, which is actually a super reputable grader, but unfortunately, they're not that well known. And simply by not being very well known, a lot of people don't care about their slabs. So their slabs don't really add a lot of value to the actual graded card. And here we have BCG, which is actually a grader that you might have never heard of. BCG, you might think that's like some defunct grading company. And again, you might think that their labels don't really add any value to their slabs. And that's absolutely true. A BCG stamp doesn't really add any value to the cards, even though they're Beckett. Beckett is literally one of the most reputable grading companies out there, yet this label adds no value to this Cramorant V. It might as well be a raw card. And then we have ourselves CGC. They've definitely been in a bit of hot water recently, but they're still a grader. And realistically, this graded slab doesn't really add any value to this ultra rare Golem EX. And that isn't a surprise to anyone. No one would really pay extra for this card. Then why are people paying thousands of dollars markup for other graded cards? What adds to the value of certain cards and certain grades? And this is extra egregious when you're talking about the price gap between a PSA 9 and a PSA 10. Remember, I just used that Magikarp as an example for the difference between a raw card and a PSA 10, but that difference is still comparable when you look at a raw Magikarp, which sometimes sells for way more than a PSA 9 Magikarp, even though the PSA 9 is really a better copy in a lot of cases than any raw copies you're ever going to find on the market. Yet people treat PSA 9s or lower grades as if they are hot garbage, even though in a lot of cases I would rather have an 8 or a 9 in my collection compared to a raw copy. So my recommendation is just ask yourself the question, are you buying the label or are you buying the card? And if you are truly buying the label, just be aware that you're buying the label. You're buying a card because of the decor and the metal and the prestige that they put on the label of the card rather than the card itself. Remember that you're buying the label and you're not buying the card. And if you want to buy the card, just pick up the card and ignore the label. Alright, I have some fun examples for you guys just to play a little game with you. We got ourselves the PSA 9 and PSA 10 Scarlet and Violet Japanese promo cards. Can you tell the difference between these two cards? Because apparently the difference between cards can change the price by tens or hundreds to thousands of dollars. Can you tell me which one's a PSA 9 and which one is a PSA 10? Probably not, and that's right in most cases, is that a PSA 9 and a PSA 10 are almost identical copies. Then why are we putting massive multipliers on higher labels? We got ourselves the PSA 9 on the right, and we got ourselves the PSA 10 on the slab. That was a really difficult one because obviously 9s and 10s, they're so close, right? Really hard to spot the difference. Let's try that again. All right, second try, can you figure it out? Which one's the 9? Which one is the 10, right? Really, really close. Probably can't spot it from across the room. They look really darn identical. Well, the difference is that this one is actually a PSA 5, and this one is a PSA 10. The 10s and the 5s, again, look absolutely identical. A lot of people put an emphasis on the card's grades, even though there isn't that significance of a difference in these cards in terms of display ability. Remember, are you buying the card or are you buying the label? This card would be so cheap, it's almost impossible to sell this card, when realistically, these two cards are almost identical. This is fun. Let's try it one more time. We got ourselves a PSA 10 versus a PSA 9. How close are they? Very, very close, right? Can you tell the difference between these two cards? Centering on the front of both look really, really solid. How about the back? Again, really, really solid. I can't really spot too many major issues with it. You might be able to spot something different if you really, really zoom in on your screen. But in general, if these two cards were on display right now, you're unlikely to really spot any major issues between these two cards. They are going to look pretty much identical from across the room, yet the value difference between these two cards are so insane right now. If you have these two cards like this, without the grade being visible, they would be giving you equivalent terms of value in terms of display ability. There's really no major difference right here. If you were planning on displaying either of these two cards and you were not aware of the grades, these two cards would be intrinsically about the same in terms of value to you, yet the value that you perceive on the PSA 10 is significantly higher than the PSA 9, except, oh wait, this isn't a PSA 9, it is a PSA 6. That's right, this card should be considered hot garbage. This card is so bad, a lot of people wouldn't even consider bidding on it because it's that low of a grade, and realistically, you're not really going to be able to spot too many errors with this card. The centering looks fantastic, there's no bumps or scratch on the whole entire front surface. It looks super clean, and yet this card is perceived as being so insanely low in value that most collectors wouldn't even consider picking up. It's out of the questions. They would never consider even picking up a PSA 6. And that's what I'm talking about. Are you buying the card or are you buying the grade? Because if you didn't notice the grades on these two cards, you might see them as identical copies on the store. If I were to crack these two cards out of their slabs and frame them up, guess what? Most collectors would equally enjoy both cards. Yet as soon as I add the value of the grades on them, suddenly, oh, one card is so standoffish, most people wouldn't pick it up, and one card is seen as so prestigious that it's going to be worth thousands of dollars. So buy the card and not the grade. Don't overinflate the value of the grade. Remember, you're buying a card and not a grade. The grading is not forever. You can change the grade. In fact, if I regrade this PSA 6 Psyduck, I could easily get it into an 8 or a 9. That's how different the grading perspective can be, is that a lot of times people will just simply take a PSA 9 and regrade it a couple of times, and they could potentially get it into a 10 because that's how close a 9 and 10 are. A 9 and a 10 is close enough that you could arguably treat some 9s as 10s because that's how close the grading is. We're talking about super minute differences here. So at the end of the day, that's what I'm gonna leave you guys with, is ignore the psychology of the card. Pick up raw copies if you can, because I'm gonna be honest with you, if you can pick up 5-10 copies of a card raw before you pick up a PSA 10 copy, I would rather have 5 to 10 raw copies of a card over a single PSA 10 any day of the week. And at the end of the day, that's because I'm collecting the card and not the grade. Thank you so much. Let me know what your thoughts are. You could think I'm completely spouting BS, and that's fine too. I'll see you guys next time.